We also have Betsy Macarthur on to discuss the results to question 4 on the recent Burlington ballot. Thank you for being here. We'll be asked voters to further amend Article 89 in the City Charter, creating a DID or Downtown Improvement District. She'll be shedding some light on what that means and why the people said no. So as I mentioned, I've got some great guests with me this evening. Thank you all for joining me. First to my right, I've got Jack Hanson. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, yeah, my name is Jack Hanson. I was recently elected as City Councilor for the East District, and I'm really excited to get to work. We're starting on April 1st, and excited to be joined by Perry, who's a new City Councilor, sitting here with me as well. And yeah, I've been in Burlington for about 7 years and graduated from UVM in 2016 with a degree in environmental studies, and I work at Green Mountain Power on helping customers reduce their fossil fuel use. So that's a little bit about me, and I'm really excited to serve on the council.
Thank you. We've also got Perry Freeman.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I'm Perry Freeman. Should I wait for the camera? Oh, good. I'm Perry. I was the councilor-elect for the Central District, which represents wards 2 and 3, and I'm a home health aid worker as well as a community organizer with various organizations and groups in the neighborhood, including Rights and Democracy. I was on staff with them for a little while, as well as have worked with the Workers Center. I was also served as a steering committee member for the Neighborhood Planning Assembly. And I'm, really excited to see the work that Rights and Democracy is doing. Was really excited to be endorsed by them, and just really excited to build this movement going forward, especially around labor issues and environmental issues.
All right. Well, thank you, Perry. And lastly, we got Betsy Macarthur.
Yeah. Hi. Should I also wait? Okay. Hi, I'm Betsy Macarthur. I am a senior at UVM. I'm studying community development and applied economics. I'm currently working on a senior thesis about zoning in Burlington, and for one of my classes, I did a lot of research on downtown improvement districts, business improvement districts, the privatization of city government in cities across America, and then this kind of came up at the same time, so I started helping out with a lot of other people on the No on 4 campaign, and I was really excited that Perry and Jack and other progressive candidates picked up this issue, as well as groups like Rights and Democracy. So thanks so much.
Thank you all for being here, really do appreciate it. Let's just jump right in. So on March 5th, as I'm sure you guys all knew, we had town meeting day in Vermont, so it gave us all a chance to weigh in on some local decision making through voting. Like much of Vermont, Burlington faced some tough political challenges to the status quo, and we saw an intense voter turnout, which was very much welcome. Perry and Jack, you're now on the Burlington City Council, part of what we would like to term as our RAD team, you two and Ali, Max and Brian. So for you two, how was the endorsement process from RAD, and what did that endorsement mean to you?
Sure. Yeah, I really appreciate the RAD endorsement process, because I think something that's unique about it, that's different about it, is there's a layer of accountability that's built into it, because you have to put onto paper, what you're going to fight for, what you believe in, and this is a document that, real community members who care about these issues are going to be able to read, and they're going to be able to refer back to after if you do get elected. And so that provides a level of accountability where people can follow up and make sure that you're actually doing what you said you were going to do. So that's something that I really appreciated about the endorsement process, and hopefully people will look back at it and we can continue the conversations in terms of what commitments I made and what I discussed within that document.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would agree that the platform is really strong, and it, as Jack was saying, it brings around a lot of good aspects of accountability around community issues, and there was an aspect of just being able to even rank sort of priorities, which I think is really good to really engage with candidates about where they stand on the issues and what they're interested in working on. So yeah, I thought it was a great process. It was exciting. It wasn't, so you're always wondering if you're going to get the endorsement, but it meant a lot, and it meant a lot having worked with Rights and Democracy and seeing the amazing work that they do, and the kind of candidates that they have endorsed who are now doing really incredible work, not just on the local level, but on the statewide level, and also in New Hampshire. Like one of an incredible RAD endorsed candidate, Mari Cordes, is just doing so much amazing stuff on the statewide level for the environment and for labor issues. So it felt really, I was so excited and really honored to be part of that cohort.
Does the network that RAD, an endorsement from RAD, not just improve what you do in an election, but beyond that? Do you get inspired by other things that RAD are doing outside, maybe the immediate area, and maybe take note and use those that framework to progress your own ideas?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, here we are. The election's over, and we're still working with RAD, and it never stopped, and we're ready to continue the work and carry it over into policy. So I'm really excited that y'all are still around. A lot of people get involved in elections and then kind of drop off. So keeping involved with groups like RAD is critical.
Yeah, and it's a great organizing hub. It brings in a lot of really like-minded folks and allows them to collaborate on really important issues, and it also brings in a lot of sort of coalition partners with other, we have this really incredible sort of ecosystem of organizers and organizing groups in Vermont, so there's a lot of potential to collaborate, and I think, it really has limitless potential to me at this point. And
so talking of potential, what can we expect from our newly established constituency of city councillors? So what's like priority number one for you guys starting in April, and what's more some long-term goals that you've got for the upcoming year and beyond? Perry, why don't you start?
Sure. So one of the things that I think is incredibly important is the intersection of economic issues with climate issues. It's something that we've seen work really effectively now on the national level with the upsurge of the Green New Deal and the popularity that's experiencing right now broadly. And so I think on the city level, we can sort of take a lot of what the Green New Deal is doing so well and incorporate that into policy initiatives. So it's really combining workers' rights with the health of our planet, with clean water, clean air, the things that are so integral to us having a system that really works for everyone. So those are my priorities. I mean, I don't know, Jack, if you want to go into a little bit more in terms of nitty-gritty, like specific policies that we're looking at.
Definitely. Perry and I focused on a lot of similar issues, and I think we just hit a couple of them. And I think one of the policy ideas that we definitely want to move forward as quickly as is realistic would be this weatherization policy, because that is something that addresses that very high cost of housing and addresses landlord accountability and addresses climate change at the same time, and addresses just waste in our economy as well. So that's a policy that I talked a lot about on my campaign, which is basically setting up baseline efficiency standards for buildings, because in Burlington we have really inefficient and poorly insulated housing stock that's really old as well. Especially kind of in the student district, in East District, and also in Old North End. So this policy would set kind of a baseline standard for thermal efficiency in buildings, and any landlord whose units were falling below that, the landlord would have to take on the heating bills until they got their building up to that level. And for many people, for many renters, this represents $200 to $300 a month in the winter, a really significant economic burden and a huge climate impact, because we're using either natural gas or oil. We're using fossil fuels to heat the vast majority of these buildings. So this is a policy that I've been really excited about, and that I kind of ran on, and that Perry and I have discussed, and many other folks are already on board with and ready to work on. So that's kind of short term. And longer term, I think we need to get to a place where we've completely gotten off of fossil fuels in Burlington. We have living wages in Burlington. We have safe housing conditions that are affordable. So this is a policy that starts us down a path, but there's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, and when we talk about workplace vitality going forward and the vitality that people are experiencing in their jobs and in their work, this is also hitting on things like prioritizing things that are in clean energy, that are in zero waste, that are also not built around a just sort of general overconsumption and waste economy. So products and services that people feel good making and also having. And I think that's really where we're moving towards sort of as a community, and so much can be also expanded upon in terms of having a democratic and healthy workplace environment, period. So I think, I'm so excited for some of these policies like weatherization, but also just thinking about where are we going from here when it comes to our economy and our political life.
And you did kind of mention previously about affordable housing, especially when it comes to renters, which obviously there's a huge population of renters in Burlington. 60% of Burlington residents are renters. Prior to this election, only 2 of Burlington's 12 city councillors were renters. Now, is that still the case? And if that's not, is that going to be something that is brought up in this upcoming year? And where do renters fall in the kind of list of priorities for the Progressive Party?
Absolutely.
Who's going first? I don't know.
So now there's 4 of us that are renters, so a quarter. Or no, sorry. Is that right?
A third.
So I was also thinking,
politicians, not mathematicians.
No, sorry, because I was also thinking there's 3 of us that don't have cars.
Oh yeah,
which is a third.
Too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or no, 4th. Gosh. Sorry.
Gotta get a calculator.
Sorry. I know arithmetic. Anyway, I think renters are absolutely a priority. I mean, so much of the East District and the Central District are renters, so much of the city, 60%. And when we look at, this is such a quality of life issue, is people's housing and being able to afford it, making sure that it's up to code, that it's weatherized, that there's so many issues that fall under that. And I'm really excited to look into those. I'm also, the other side of affordability just is wages. It's actually often really the primary cause of a lack of affordability. So I think we can really tackle both of those issues in terms of people having, good enough wages to and rent that's affordable, because we do have sort of an out of control rental market that's not working.
Yeah, I think it's really critical to have the experiences and the voices of renters represented in our city government, because this is a huge issue in Burlington. A lot of people you talk to, they'll be like, oh, I love Burlington, but the housing is just ridiculous. And so, and I've experienced that firsthand as a renter in Burlington, not only the high prices, but being ripped off on a security deposit, being lied to about what was going to be paid for in terms of heating, hot water, having no one respond when there's an issue in an apartment, when there's something beeping, when there's a window's broken, and having it take weeks of pestering someone and working your way up some bureaucracy of these really large landlords or property managers. So I think those stories, those experiences need to be present on the council if we're going to really address our housing crisis.
Agreed. Betsy, so you wrote a fantastic op-ed in VT Digger before the election, and it was noted, especially from some people I know, that op-ed was the reason why they ended up voting no on 4, opposing the new DID. Now, I would really love to hear from you about what sparked your interest in writing an op-ed on that. How did you get into this subject in the first place, and how you feel now that we voted no on Prop 4?
Yeah. Well, I guess to start, it was like a class project last semester. Thanks, Professor Farley, for assigning that. But I had to do like a really long research project, and I had some interest in housing already, and especially in Burlington. Like, I rent an apartment on Bradley Street. My rent's going up next year. I'm moving to the Old North End, and so I have experienced this increasing rental market in Burlington. And so I wanted to kind of look at some of the reasons for that, and also like city governance generally, and like kind of private interest in city government. And it kind of, something that I uncovered while doing this research was business improvement districts in a lot of other places. And that's essentially like a private tax mechanism where businesses pay into some type of fund and then they get to provide the services. And it's not really controlled by the city government. It's like not public oversight. There's not a lot of public accountability, but it's for the businesses. It's for like private profits. And they have a lot of control over things like things that seem kind of mundane, like flower pots or lighting and signs and things like that. But then they also have control over things like public safety. And that's a huge issue when you think of like who is controlling public safety in our cities. It probably shouldn't be for the sake of private interests. So that was like huge and alarming to me that this was happening in other places. And then at the same time, this was being proposed in Burlington. And so I went to one of like the public, it was like a town hall, but there wasn't a ton of engagement with the public on it. And I was really disappointed by that. And it really seemed to be a proposal that came from a smaller group of people from like the Burlington Business Association and a few other kind of, privately motivated, profit motivated groups and people that were putting this forward, and not necessarily from like, people asking that this happen. So that's kind of where it started, and I'm really, really, really happy that it lost. And I think people were really concerned about it for two different reasons. One of them being this housing issue we're seeing in Burlington is so expensive to live here. And when these business improvement districts are put in place in other cities, property values increase by, there was one study in New York where they increased 15%, which is, if you think about like property values translating into rents, it's like your rent's gonna increase. And again, the people that were pushing for this, the people that were gonna be in control of this were largely gonna be property owners. And so that's like, property value increase, that's just an increase in their own wealth. But at the expense of like all of the 60% of people that aren't super wealthy in Burlington. And so I think that was a huge concern for people in Burlington while we're like facing this housing crisis. Like, why are we making it worse? And the other thing was, of course, public safety. I think it's pretty obvious that like private interests shouldn't be controlling public safety, shouldn't be having street ambassadors, whatever that may look like. And so, yeah, I think that was pretty concerning to a lot of people in Burlington.
And you did mention in the op-ed the DID was going to have a proposed board, which wasn't going to be exactly representative of those living directly in that area. Now, how do you reckon, if this did go ahead, how could that board have been better created to give a better representation of those who actually have to live and work in that area? And following on from there, we have a number of boards in town that control things like development. And this is kind of an open forum question. Do you believe that the way it's set up at the moment is adequate, or do you think there should be a reform of the boards that we currently have in town?
Broadly, or specifically the Church Street Marketplace?
Broadly.
Okay.
So not just Church Street Marketplace, although that too, but also things like the Development Review Board.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I can start. So the DID board was proposed to mostly be, well, it also changed. It changed during the process kind of because people were pushing back on this. But there are going to be 11 people on the board. 5 of them were going to be chosen by the fee payers. It wasn't entirely clear if that was going to be the business owners or the property owners. And yeah, at first it wasn't set out that like renters in particular, that people living in the district had to be represented. And so I think like having specific criteria for who's on these boards and who we want to be on these boards, especially if it's going to be people that are going to be negatively impacted by the potential things that they're doing, is huge, to have that perspective there and having a voice that like is living that. And yeah, I mean, I think the Church Street Marketplace Commission as it is currently, I'm not certain of this, but I'm pretty sure that there aren't renters on that as it is now. And so that's like definitely a huge thing to think about moving forward, and for our counselors to think about moving forward, like who's going to be on these boards. But it's frustrating because they're unpaid. It's just something that you choose to do pretty much. And a lot of people obviously don't have time for that kind of thing if they're working and trying to pay Burlington rent.
Yeah, I think with the boards, we need to be more proactive, similar to the approach that I think is catching on around running for office, where there is more of an emphasis now of, all right, let's actually go out and recruit and find candidates who wouldn't have otherwise stepped forward, but whose voices are totally underrepresented. And let's really encourage people to come forward and run for office and get involved. People who don't see themselves as politicians, or maybe don't think that they have the skill set, partly because they've been underrepresented, so they haven't seen themselves in those positions. So I think that approach that we're beginning to take with elected positions, we should also look at in terms of our boards, and really encouraging more diversity on these boards, and getting more people involved who wouldn't kind of naturally step forward or even be aware of this. And I think now, I think there's obviously great people on these boards, but I think there's also a lot of great people who aren't aware that they exist, who could bring a lot into them.
Yeah, I mean, to bridge onto what Jack is saying, there's a real issue with accessibility, and I think if we want to have a model of community governance where sort of everyone has a seat at the table, boards and committees are absolutely, and commissions are really a part of that. So how do we do that? It's being, as organizers, being active, proactive really, because so much of this stuff, it's amazing. I mean, a lot of it is designed also to be, not designed to be inaccessible, but it's, there's a lot of work to bring people in when systems are meant to be have structural barriers and sort of keep people disillusioned and sort of confused and in the dark. So I think there's so much work that we have to do as organizers and as community members to be proactive. And basically what Jack and Betsy are saying is to just, be proactive and think about, not just our involvement and people's involvement at the highest, levels of office, but really at every level of our governance structures and our decision making. There was so much push, even, we're seeing this in planning and development and zoning, to have a community driven process. And so as organizers, we need to bring the community in. And this is a big part of that.
Absolutely. So we've only got about 5 minutes left, so I'm going to crack on and try and get a few questions out of the way before we finish. Jack, question for you regarding, I think it was an op-ed that I read, that you mentioned that you wanted to reach across the aisle to fellow board members, fellow council members, if you got elected. So I was wondering which ways you'd be doing this.
Definitely, yeah. I think a lot of the coverage of this election has focused on adversarial tone is a phrase that I've heard. It's going to be a more adversarial tone. On certain issues, there's definitely going to be disagreement, and I think that's important for a healthy democracy, and that's fine, and I'm ready to do that and stand up for what I campaigned on, whether or not it aligns with others on the council or with the mayor. But there's also going to be and there needs to be a lot of collaboration to get things done and to move forward and to really have a tangible impact. So I'm excited to work particularly on climate change, where there is this widespread agreement, and I expect and hope that other councilors and the mayor will support these initiatives that will really have a big impact on climate, because we have a really long way to go, and we're going to need to be aggressive if we're going to get there in 12 years or 11 and a half years now. So I'm pretty hopeful that we can really make movement on areas where we do agree, like climate change.
And Perry, you're no stranger to unseating centrists or Republicans. In fact, I did hear you were involved in a campaign to unseat a Republican in the North End, New North End, sorry. So in terms of that, how do we make sure this progressive movement keeps moving forward after such a fantastic election we had this year?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, now, if at any time ever is just a time to continue to scale up. Historically, really, I think, Jack is just mentioning the fact it's a 45% decrease in emissions, greenhouse gas emissions in like the next 10 to 12 years. Is that roughly?
Least, yeah.
At least.
That's the bare minimum.
And this
yeah.
is serious because it's the entire system. And so everything falls under that, our healthcare, our education, our food, our air, our water, it's everything. It is literally everything. Like our entire lives are on the line and everything that we really hold dear. So I think in order to continue this movement around policies that are really going to transform and revolutionize our systems and like our entire system to be one that is sustainable for generations, it is an all-out pull and really and to scale up. And I think I've been so excited to see the increase in engagement that so many people are having. I think there has been a lot of anxiety for a lot of people newfound because of Trump. And it feels really, really scary. But there were a lot of things that we should have been doing economically, internationally, and environmentally that didn't happen during the 90s and the 2000s that were maybe quieter, that people, if the alarm bells are on now, we shouldn't feel like they're turning off at any point. Like we have to keep going. We have to build that momentum. It's time to scale up. It's time to get really engaged. And I'm glad that people are starting to feel that and hear that, but it has to be, it has to be sort of all the time right now. We can't, we have to stay engaged.
Oh, I think on that note, I thank you guys all so much for coming in. Really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
And if you want to stay engaged, keep watching RADTV. You can also sign up to a sustaining membership. If you help us grow, then we can all win together. Become a sustaining member of Rights and Democracy and help us continue to push for progressive values and progressives like you guys all over Vermont and New Hampshire and hopefully beyond at some point. So be rad, become a sustaining member today. radvt.org and radnh.org. So please donate. Thank you guys also so much for watching. Thank you guys for coming in. I really appreciate it. Come in again whenever. I'm sure we'll be inviting you back a few months down the line. We'll see you again next month, right back here on the 4th Friday of the month. I've been your host, Tom Proctor. This has been RADTV. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.